Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I got my kinky llama here. He's all tied up and ready for some kink and BDSM. I am Andy. If you're not familiar with me, I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend Emmy for about 6.5 years now. We date and sleep with women together, enjoying threesomes, BDSM, kink, and all that juicy good stuff. We are here to introduce you to the world of BDSM and kink and a lot of other things if that is something that you're into. There can be a lot of stigma and misconception around BDSM and kink in society. A lot of people have a lot of preconceived notions about what kink and BDSM might be. There can be a lot of cultural pressure, a lot of stigma. There can definitely be a lot of religious guilt and shame around it. And I myself felt a lot of, I guess I would say, shyness and embarrassment and a little bit of awkwardness when I first started getting into kink and BDSM. And I started very slow. I just dipped my toe in the water. I tried a few things. I took some tiny little baby steps towards improving at things. I bought some sex toys. I bought some ropes. I bought some blindfolds and gags like you see this little llama boy here having. But I started very slow. And you can do the same thing. If kink and BDSM is something that you want to get into, you can go one step at a time. You don't have to throw yourself into the world of BDSM and kink and all of that if you're nervous, because that can be a little bit overwhelming. Because a lot of people do have a lot of preconceived notions about what BDSM and kink is. They've watched 50 Shades of Grey and they think, oh God, like that doesn't look like a very healthy, loving, supportive relationship. It feels like one person who went through some trauma, the Christian Grey character, sort of putting that trauma onto other people, and maybe they don't have healthy boundaries and they haven't taught consent and all of that kind of stuff. Holy shit, I don't want to do that stuff. And a lot of people have sort of stigmas around kink and BDSM. They just see it purely as abuse, which it definitely can be. I'm not here to say that there is no abuse in BDSM. For sure, there can be. There's a lot of power dynamics that can go on. We like to handle that in a responsible way where we're not hurting anybody. But a lot of people don't know that stuff. They don't know about consent, or they don't know that consent is often a very big part of BDSM and kink. They don't know that you would sit down and discuss things with your potential play partners before you do anything. They don't know any of that, and they just assume BDSM and kink must be someone who has power abusing someone who's in a vulnerable position. And yes, that can happen sometimes, but that doesn't have to be how BDSM and kink is. My girlfriend, Emmy, went through this sort of stigma when she and I first started dating. One of her family members found her profile, and she had a very BDSM-oriented profile on Tinder because she was finding women for us to date together and sleep with and do some BDSM and kink. And so a family member saw her profile and saw that she mentioned BDSM. She just had it like in her profile or in her bio saying, hey, we're looking for, kink and BDSM partners. And had an intervention with Emmy, sat her down and said, you're doing BDSM. This Andy guy that you've been dating for a while is doing BDSM with you. That's abuse. He's abusing you. You need to break up with him. It was like an intervention. And Emmy was obviously like, what are you talking about? That's not what BDSM is. We're in a relationship. He's not abusing me. I want to do this. This is fun. We're doing this together. And the family member sort of struggled to, I guess, let go of their own preconceived notions and move through that and say, all right, I trust you. There was sort of none of that at first. It took probably 6 months or a year for her sister to let go of those preconceived notions and accept, okay, you seem happy. The relationship seems to be adding to your life. You guys have talked about consent and boundaries. He seems to care about your happiness. He's not trying to use you with the power dynamic. Okay, great, fine. So lots of people have these preconceived notions. And Emmy even went through this when she was younger than that. When she was 14, she had this diary that she used to write in, and she talked a little bit about kink and BDSM in there, and her mother found the diary, and yeah, as I think a lot of mothers would when their 14-year-old daughter is talking about BDSM, her mother freaked out a little bit and went to like a school counselor or a therapist and said, holy crap, like what do I do? They had an intervention with Emmy, and she was obviously very embarrassed, and she was like, no, I just like to write about this stuff and fantasize about this stuff. No, I haven't done any of this. No, I'm not being abused. I'm a virgin. I just like to talk about this. She covered this in a video on our channel, this one here, Emmy's embarrassing BDSM story. She literally talked through that. But what can help with the sort of stigma or the shame or the embarrassment or the nervousness about kink and BDSM and all of that stuff is finding other people that you're happy to talk to about this and that are open-minded and happy to talk to you about this stuff. That could be websites like fetlife.com. That could be going to events that are known as munchers, which is basically you just go to a cafe or you go hang out with people who are also into kinky sex and BDSM, and you just talk. It's just like a hangout, like at a cafe. You'll talk about kink. You'll talk about all of this sort of stuff in a very non-judgmental, open-minded space. You can also go to sex events. You can go to sex exhibitions. You can go to sex clubs and things like that. There are obviously lots of online communities where you can talk to people about kinky sex and BDSM and all of that. You can watch YouTube videos on it, like you're watching this video right now. Do a bunch of research. You can talk about it with your partners, your sexual partners, or your husband or your wife or whatever. Start opening up about this stuff. You can obviously search directly for play partners, like people that are into kink and sex and kinky sex and BDSM on dating apps. This is something that I and my girlfriend Emmy do together. Here on the screen, you can see the Hinge profile that I use, and Emmy has her own profile for us to find women together, and hers is very similar to this. You can see there in the bio or in the written prompts, I say I'm in an open relationship. We're both into BDSM and we're both very good at teaching. So I make it very clear and very upfront what it is that we're looking for. And we have an entire video going through our profile and what we message and all of that. That is this video right here. You can just search on our channel for Hinge profile or messaging guide. We talk about the messages that we send, the profile that we use, what we do on a first date, how we talk about kink and BDSM with potential partners, how we make sure everyone is on the same page and we all want the same thing, what we do the first time we have sex and fool around and all of that. So that's like a full-on guide that explains all of that stuff. So yeah, there's plenty of people out there that you can talk to about kink and BDSM. They could be friends, they could be other people that are doing it, it could be potential play partners, it could be your partner that you're already seeing, but lots of people are open-minded and are willing to sit down and talk about this stuff and help you sort of start exploring it, particularly if you're nervous or if you've come from a place of like judgment or you've had other people judge you or you're worried about being judged. There are lots of people that just see kink and BDSM as a fun little thing that you get to explore in the bedroom, and everyone's consenting, everyone's having fun. It doesn't have to be this big, scary, shameful, weird, deviant thing that a lot of people think when they think about kinky sex. And let's talk about some of the sort of stigmas or things that might not be fully true, maybe some of the myths and the misconceptions around kink and BDSM. I think the biggest one is that BDSM and kink doesn't have to involve abuse. It doesn't have to involve pain. It doesn't have to involve degradation or calling people dirty names or any of that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be an abusive thing. In fact, Emmy and I like to be very gentle with our kink. With each other, we're very gentle. With any play partners, I sort of take on almost like a paternal caregiver role as a dominant. I like to look after people. I'm obviously a life coach. That's what I do on this channel. I coach people, I mentor people. And so my motto in the bedroom is, it's only fun if you're also having fun. I literally say that to people, particularly because Emmy and I have dated quite a few or played with quite a few people that have no experience with kink or BDSM. And they come to us very nervous. We've even played with a few women who happen to be virgins. They come to us very nervous, as I'm sure you can imagine. And they have a lot of stigma and preconceived notions about what BDSM might be. We've had quite a lot of people say, I'm scared that it's going to hurt. I'm scared that I won't know how to say no. I'm scared that I won't know how to have boundaries. And so we will talk them through all of that and say, no, it doesn't have to hurt. We don't like it to hurt that much. We might spank you if you ask us to. We can explore that later on, but especially the first time or the first couple of times, and especially if you're inexperienced and nervous or even a virgin, yeah, we're going to go very freaking slow. We're going to make sure you're having fun. We're going to ask you 50 or 100 times, how does that feel? Would you like to try something else? Would you like it a bit harder? Would you like it a bit softer? What do you want? How are you feeling? What are you thinking? Do you want to take a break? Do you want to cuddle? We're going to ask a million of those questions and we'll go super slow. So BDSM and kink can be this thing that sort of adds to other people's lives and doesn't have to be this big, scary thing. It can be quite loving. We covered that in this video here. It's called How to Know If a Relationship is Good for You. And we talked about BDSM there. We basically said how to make sure that any of your BDSM relationships or BDSM play partners are actually adding to your life and adding to the lives of anyone that you play around with. How to make sure this is actually positive for you, rather than almost like an abuse situation or a situation where you leave with your self-esteem feeling a little bit lower or your partner leaves with the self-esteem feeling a little bit lower. There's a really nice Mother Teresa quote that I love that says, "Let nobody come to you without leaving a little bit better off." And that's kind of a nice little mindset that we have with BDSM and kink. You can take that same mindset if you would like to. So it can be something that adds to people's lives and makes them happier and more fulfilled and more well-rounded, and they get to have some fun kinky sex with you, and they get to leave feeling a little bit better off. In other words, BDSM and kink can be this thing where you improve people's self-esteem. You can help teach them boundaries. Like literally, you can walk them through the process of saying no to you. You know, I did a whole video on this with consent and boundaries. This video here, you can just search on my channel for consent. It's called Consent, the Simplest Guide You'll Ever Read. Essentially, you're trying to add to the self-esteem of anyone that you play with and your own self-esteem. And so that can be something that BDSM takes on. This role of like, I want to add to other people's lives. If they're going to play with me, I want them to feel better about themselves. I want them to be happier and more experienced and more loving and have stronger boundaries and feel good about themselves. I want them to feel good about their body. Maybe you give them a ton of compliments during sex and tell them how good they're doing, you know, lots of praise and tell them that they're really pretty or they're really handsome or whatever it might be. You can make them feel better off about themselves rather than what I think a lot of people have an assumption with BDSM, where they assume you're going to do BDSM and then you both leave, or one of you leaves feeling a little bit worse about yourself and the other one leaves feeling better. BDSM doesn't have to be this thing where it's like one person wins and one person loses. You know, it doesn't have to be this I take from you and you have to give to me. No, we can both share in something together. So that's another sort of stigma. People think of BDSM solely in terms of like a power dynamic, and that one person has all the power and the other person is very vulnerable. And the person that has all the power is going to leave feeling inflated, like their ego is going to inflate. They're going to feel better about themselves and all of that. And then the person who's in the submissive role is going to leave feeling deflated and worse about themselves. No, it doesn't have to be like that. I like to think of BDSM and kink as we're going to come together and explore something together. It's you and me on the same team. We're doing this together. It's not me doing something to you. It's you and me doing something with each other. I'm not doing BDSM to you. I'm doing BDSM with you, and you're doing it with me. So that sort of more positive mindset, or mindset of like, I want you to leave feeling better about yourself and I leave feeling better about myself, and then it's mutually beneficial. It's not one person using the other person, or it doesn't have to be like that. Yes, some BDSM and kink, people do use each other, but I like to go solely down the pathway of like, I want it to be good for both of us. And every video that we do on this channel has that mindset. If you're someone that has the mindset of like, no, I want to use people, this channel, you probably already wouldn't be watching, but this channel is not for you. This channel is very much like, let's add to the lives of people around us. Let's make the world a little bit happier. Let's make ourselves happier. Let's make our partners happier. Let's make our friends happier. This is a positive channel where we add to the world rather than sort of taking. And on that front, BDSM and kink and any kinky sex that you might have can involve lots of like niceness and gentleness and cuddles. I did a video on this. This video here, aftercare. So you can just search my channel for the word aftercare. And if you're not familiar, aftercare just means after you had some pretty passionate or kinky sex. I mean, you can do this after any sex. It doesn't even have to be kinky sex. Aftercare is after sex, you just have a cuddle. You just lay there, you cuddle, you go, how was that? Is there something you want to try next time? How do you feel? You just have a bit of a snuggle and sort of let both of your emotions go down a little bit, let you catch your breath. You just have some nice time together. And this is something that I've always sort of done, even before BDSM and kink. I would just have a cuddle with someone after sex, even casual sex, you know, even if all we were is booty calls for each other, we were just a hookup. I would cuddle after sex. You know, it doesn't have to be a long time, could be half an hour, could be an hour, could be 15 minutes, whatever you both want to do. But BDSM and kink can involve a lot of cuddles and niceness and sweetness and caressing each other's face and looking into each other's eyes and being very loving and all of that. Doesn't have to be this crazy thing. It can also be quite vanilla if you want it to be. There's this video on my channel. You can just search for vanilla on my channel that my good friend Cam did. And he is someone that is a lot more vanilla than I am. He's not super into kinky stuff. He's definitely not into any rough BDSM. He's just a vanilla person. And so he's just into normal kind of sex. But he likes to do little bits and pieces of BDSM. He likes a little bit of a power dynamic. He likes to be a little bit passionate and maybe a little bit rough. He likes to use blindfolds or sex toys from time to time. But he's very, very, very vanilla. And so BDSM and kink can be quite vanilla if you want it to be. And I think on that note, another sort of stigma or misconception that people can have about BDSM is that it has to be super complicated. You need a whole bunch of toys, you need a whole bunch of like blindfolds and restraints and this and that and the other. No, it can be incredibly simple. It could be as simple as like grabbing a blindfold, like I've got my little llama boy blindfolded here. You just put on like a blindfold. It could be a scarf, put a blindfold over your partner's eyes and then just go down on them. Make them feel really good. Spend like half an hour or an hour teasing them, going very slow, being very gentle, caressing them, giving them oral sex maybe playing with your hands or your fingers, and just going really, really, really slow. That can be kinky sex. That can be one of the most incredibly kinky, almost like tantric experiences that you and your partner could ever share. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to involve power dynamics. You don't have to be in power and the other person is submissive or vice versa. It doesn't have to involve any of that stuff. It can if you want to, and that stuff can be very fun. But you can even just be two peers. You can be a husband and a wife and you're like, honey, would you like to try blindfolding me tonight? And he's like, oh, okay, you kinky little woman. Sure, I'll do that. Boom. Or if you've always had sex with the lights off, like your entire relationship, you could try turning the lights on. And that can be incredibly kinky. Try looking at each other's bodies if you've never done that before. Or maybe you've always done the opposite. You've almost always had like a lamp on or a candle or just the lights on. Maybe try having sex in pitch black. And then you can't see anything. And you're having to explore each other's bodies with your hands. It's more about the senses and the touch and the hearing, like moaning and all of that kind of stuff. That can be incredibly kinky. And so kink and BDSM doesn't have to be super complicated. It can just be two peers who see each other as equals and there's no power dynamic and you don't have many toys. You're just kind of messing around with some different things. You could even do things like edging, which is where you bring your partner right to the edge of orgasm and they say, I'm going to come, and then you stop. And they go, oh my God, like, why did you stop? I was about to come. And you go, You have to earn your orgasm. And they go, oh. It's kinky, it's naughty, it's fun. You can do that to a guy or you can do that to a woman. You could play with some sex toys in there if you wanted to as well. But BDSM and kink doesn't have to be this big, complicated, overwhelming, scary thing. And it felt like that for me when I first started. I was terrified of BDSM and kink. I thought it was this big, wide world, and it is. But I thought that meant I had to learn everything and be an expert and be good at it. I have so many coaching clients that have said to me, I want to try BDSM, but I'm worried that any woman that I do this with will say that I'm no good and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not an expert. I'm putting all this pressure on myself that I have to be this like perfect, dominant alpha male who knows everything and understands all of BDSM and kink and will never make a mistake. And it's like, no, it can just be two people that say, hey, do you want to try a blindfold tonight? Yeah, that sounds fun. Hey, do you want to go to an adult sex toy shop with me and we can buy a vibrator or something and play with it together? Yeah, great. So you can sort of dip your toe in the water and go very slow. You don't have to do everything all at once. Like BDSM and kinky sex is like this big, wide open world, and you're allowed to explore as much of it or as little of it as you want. And obviously, you can explore none of it if you don't want to. I don't know why you'd be this far into this video if you had no interest in BDSM and kink, but yeah, you're under no obligation to do anything in BDSM and kink. Do whatever you and your partner want to explore and try, and you do not have to be an expert at anything. Even if you're in the dominant role, you do not have to be a really confident dominant. You can just be a very honest dominant, which is what I did at the start. And I would just literally say to women, hey, I bought a blindfold. I don't know how to use it. Do you want to come over and try it with me? And she would go, oh, that sounds fun. Let's try it. Or I'd say, hey, I bought some ropes or some handcuffs. I don't know how to use them. Do you want to watch a YouTube tutorial with me and we can try it? And you can be like my, mannequin, my toy, and I will try it on you and we'll see how it feels. And she'd go, oh, that sounds fun. Like most people are pretty open-minded if they're already into BDSM and kink or they're already like wanting to try it. They'll be open-minded about the fact that you're not an expert if you own it. But if you feel embarrassed and shame about it and you're like, oh God, I should be an expert, I should be a good dom, then yeah, you put that shame onto the other person. You put that embarrassment and that awkwardness and all of that. So just own it as best you can. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you want to try this with me? Yeah, that sounds good. Let's try it together. I think another sort of misconception or maybe like pressure that people put on themselves is they're like, what if my friends and family find out? How would I tell them? How do I tell my friends and family that I'm into kink and BDSM? You don't have to. You're under no obligation to tell other people what you and your partners do in the bedroom. The other people in the world are not entitled to the information in your head. I think we know that on a logical level, but then we put this sort of pressure on ourselves of like, oh, fuck, how would I tell people? If you don't want to, you don't have to. I have hinted at bits of BDSM with my family, but I haven't sat them down and said, hey, by the way, I'm a kinky little boy and I like to do all of these fetishes and here's what I'm into and here's like what Emmy and I do. No, All I've told them is Imi and I are in an open relationship and we date women together. That's it. That's all I've really ever said. Now, if my parents said to me, have you ever tried kink or BDSM? I'd go, yeah. And if they go on my channel, which sometimes they do, if they go onto my channel, yeah, they'll see the BDSM and the kink videos. But I've never like sat them down and had like a coming out. You know, I've never gone like, hi, I want to come out to you and tell you that I'm a BDSMer. I'm a kinky boy. No. And if I meet someone new, like I'm meeting someone at a party, I don't tell them. I don't identify as like a BDSM or a kink person. Now, any of my friends, they all know because we know each other. If it comes up in conversation, then hell yeah, I'll tell people. I'm not going to shy away from it. But I certainly don't walk around putting a label on myself as a BDSM or a kink person. You can if you want to, but I'm just saying I personally don't, and neither does Imi, my partner. We're basically just two people who happen to do a little bit of BDSM and kink. And you're allowed to, if you want to, have that same sort of approach or take that same approach. You don't have to go around saying, I'm the BDSM kink person. Hello, I am BDSM kink. You don't need like some call sign. You don't have to like have a little gang sign that you do. This would probably be the gang sign of like BDSM. You put your hands together or something like you're being restrained, but you don't have to go around flashing your little gang sign at people. Again, you can if you want to. Plenty of people do. On our dating profiles, like I showed you before, we mention in the profile that we're into BDSM and kink. Sure, so that's us putting it out there. But that's more for the purpose of finding people. But you don't have to tell every single person on the planet that you're into BDSM because, yes, some people will have preconceived notions. I've been called certain maybe judgmental names when I've gone to parties and people go, oh, like, and they just start talking about sex. And then sex comes up and then I go, yeah, I'm a little bit into BDSM and kink. Like Imi and I like to explore that stuff. I've had people say you're a deviant, you're a pervert. I've obviously been called an abuser. Any of those sort of things. So there's a lot of like sort of judgmental people out there and they don't mean to be. It can be very painful to be a judgmental person. It doesn't feel very nice to judge others, but they don't mean to. And so we have love and compassion in our hearts for those people and we just move away from those people. You know, we don't spend time with people that would judge us, or we don't talk about this stuff with people who are going to judge us for it or who've already shown us that they will judge us. But I promise you, there are a lot of people out there who won't judge. They'll be open-minded. They'll be gentle with you. They'll be nice about it. They won't have preconceived stigmas or labels, or maybe they will. Maybe they already have preconceived notions, but they'll ask you questions. They'll go, oh, but I thought BDSM was abuse. Like, is it? And then you go, well, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. But normal sex can be abusive too. People in loving relationships abuse each other and can be controlling and jealous and violent and cheating and all of that sort of stuff. So there's abuse everywhere. People in power can abuse each other as well. There's abuse all over the world. So it's not just strictly in BDSM and kink, but I think BDSM and kink has that sort of label. And movies like 50 Shades of Grey probably didn't help that much. If you haven't seen the movie, there are some dynamics in the movie that are not super, I don't know what the word would be, super healthy maybe. And the main character, Christian Grey, the man, the dominant guy, is in a very big position of power over the vulnerable girl. I think her name is like Anastasia. She's very vulnerable. I think she's a virgin when she comes to him, and she's very submissive and all of that. And she doesn't know how to have boundaries at times. And he doesn't really, he does his best, but he doesn't always teach her how to have boundaries and say no. And there are a couple of scenes in some of the movies where he's basically, I think he's like spanking her and getting really rough, and she's like full on crying. And he just keeps going and she's saying like no, and they just, you know, push through that and do it anyway. So there are some parts of the movie that are quite controlling. He's also quite controlling in his behavior. He forbids her from talking to other people. He's just very stalkerish at times. Like he literally shows up to her workplace and essentially just, maybe stalk is a harsh word, but I don't get the sense that he's a chill, easygoing guy that you could just say no to and everything would be okay. In fact, there's several times she does say no, and he just keeps going and keeps stalking and all of that sort of stuff. So maybe not the best representation of BDSM and kink. He's a controlling guy who just happens to also do BDSM and kink. But I think a lot of people associate that movie with BDSM and kink and go, oh shit, so it has to be a man in power who abuses a vulnerable woman who doesn't know how to say no. And it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. And maybe I can finish up by saying with kink, as well as like any sex and relationships and dating and even friendships and stuff, do whatever you want to do and what your partner wants to do. You do you. There is no right way to do BDSM. There is no right way to do sex or relationships or any of that. What I would gently guide you towards is doing it in a way where it adds to your life and the life of anyone that you play with. if you're not up for that. Like if your mindset is almost like sociopathic and you're like, no, I just want to take. And there are lots of people that have that mindset in the world. If you're like, I just want to take, I don't give a fuck if my partner is happy, this channel is probably not for you. Or keep watching and maybe some of my positivity rubs off on you. But generally speaking, that's about the only caveat that I would have for BDSM and kink and sex and dating, is try and add to the lives of the people that you date, and they will try and add to your life, and find people that you feel will add to your life. I have a whole video on this. This video here, how to know if a relationship is good for you. I cover serious relationships, casual relationships, BDSM, and I even covered like friendships and stuff like that. So that's how to know if you're adding to the lives of people that you date or sleep with, and how to know if they are adding to your life. We have an entire playlist. We have some full-on guides and anything that you could ever want to know about BDSM, about contracts, about femdom, a woman being dominant, male dom, a man being dominant. We have videos on restraints and collars and blah, blah, blah. Easy ways to get into BDSM, sexual bucket list. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. We even have a couple of full-on, massive, huge guides. This one here is the ultimate guide to becoming a male dominant. Like if you're a man and you want to take the lead, that is like the ultimate guide to that. And then there's a woman one. If you're a woman and you want to be in charge, or if you're a man who wants to learn how to find some dominant women, that is the ultimate guide to that. So these two videos, they're some of our most popular videos too. Look at this one. It's got 364,000 views. So these are the videos that I would probably start with. But yeah, there is an entire playlist called BDSM and Kink on my channel. So to summarize, yes, there is a lot of BDSM and kink stigma out there and a lot of preconceived notions and a lot of judgment and all of that. BDSM gets a bad rap with some people in society, and that's okay. There will always be people that judge things and all of that, but I like to come at BDSM and kink from the mindset of I want myself to be better off for having done this, and I want my partners to be better off for having done this with me. I want everyone to come to me leaving a little bit better than before they met me, as best I can. You can't always guarantee that, but you just try your best to add to the lives of people that you date. If you'd like any more help with this, I offer coaching. I've actually coached quite a few people on BDSM and kink. Like they come to us and they say, I want to start getting into BDSM and kink. I want to know where to find partners. I want to know how to explore it in a fun, safe way. And we've coached them through that. We've even coached a woman. There's a woman in the coaching program right now. This is her third time coming to the coaching program. And when she first came to the coaching, she wanted to start BDSM and kink. She wanted to do it in a healthy way that added to her life. She wanted to know where to find partners and how to screen for good men that would add to her life. And so we coached her through all of that. She did all of that. And now she's been in a relationship with a guy for like almost a year, I think. And they've been exploring BDSM and kink together and having a great time. And they're sort of dating and they're play partners. So this is something that we help a lot of people with, men and women. If that appeals to you, there's a coaching link in the description below. If not, that's beautiful too. As always, ladies and gentlemen, go out there and crush those goals. And if you want to, be a little bit kinky while you do it.